Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After 3 years together, even a touch from George made me feel disgusted. Yet he ended up in bed with his crush. I became a joke. Everyone was waiting for me to make amends with him, but this time I didn't show up. Late at night, George rarely called me on his own, but I heard a man's voice in the background. He was furious. "If you dare touch her, I'll kill you." Jeffrey, sweating beads on his chest with a flirtatious tone, said, "She's really soft. I should thank you. After following you for 3 years, living as a widow, her first kiss still belongs to me." "George, what's with the hickey on your neck?" In the bar's private room, George's friends pointed at his neck and asked, "I heard Lucy came back yesterday. You went to pick her up. Could it be the two of you?" "No way. Isn't George supposed to be allergic to women?" "Exactly. He was with Vivian for 3 years, and Vivian's first kiss is still intact. Quite funny when you think about it. You guys just don't understand. How can Vivian compare to Lucy? Lucy is George's first love, his unforgettable crush." "That's right. If Lucy hadn't chosen to follow his older brother abroad back then, there wouldn't even be a chance for Vivian." Sitting on the sofa nearby, I listened to their conversation, feeling like I had been doused with cold water in the middle of winter, with my blood freezing in my veins. I finally noticed a dark purple hickey on George's neck, more prominent against his pale skin. He listened to their discussion calmly, without denying it. My heart ached densely, and I stared fixedly at the hickey, unable to snap out of it for a moment. "Stop talking. Lucy is here." The door of the private room was pushed open, and Lucy walked in, wearing a black fitted dress, tall and slender, with wavy curls, stunningly beautiful. She was even more beautiful than in the photos. "Long time no see." Lucy greeted with a sweet smile. Amidst a chorus of whistles, George stood up and extended his hand to her. She naturally placed her hand in his and sat down beside him, looking more like George's official girlfriend than me. Lucy is getting more and more beautiful. Is her return this time meant to reconcile with George? She smiled. "Don't talk nonsense. I heard George already has a girlfriend here. Don't mention it. You know George has some intimacy issues, especially with women. He has been with his girlfriend for 3 years without even a kiss, but as soon as you came back." His friend's tone was flirtatious. Lucy's cheeks flushed slightly as she glared at George. "Who told them about that?" George smirked. "I didn't say anything. Is what they said true, George? Did you really?" Lucy seemed surprised and somewhat amused. "You and her for real?" George remained silent, his gaze slightly colder as he looked at me. My face turned pale, and I was so disheveled that I couldn't even hold the drink steadily, spilling it on my skirt. Lucy covered her mouth, leaning into George's arms, laughing merrily. "You're really something, making her look so pitiful." I stood up slowly, wiping the water stains from my skirt. George watched coldly, tissue in hand. In those moments of hesitation, the pain in my chest turned numb, and I gradually became clear-headed. I no longer owed George anything. 3 years ago, George shielded my face in a car accident, injuring his right hand with shattered glass. He was a talented painter but lost the ability to paint due to the accident. In his most desolate days, the room was full of empty bottles, and he would lash out at anyone who tried to get close. Lucy left him during that time. Filled with guilt, all I wanted to know was how to make it up to him. At that time, with paint all over his hands, sitting amidst the mess, his handsome face was dull, as if devoid of any light. What could make it up? He quirked a smile, somewhat sarcastic. "I lacked nothing except a woman." These 3 years he refused to do rehab. I encouraged him to paint with his left hand, gradually rebuilding his confidence. Through days of practice, his skills improved, surpassing what he achieved with his right hand. The results were even more stunning. George became more dependent on me day by day. Even though he was reluctant to have physical contact with me due to his psychological barriers, he always wanted me within his sight to paint. I understood his past and never forced him to be close to me. Several times, he would grab the back of my neck, inching closer to my lips, eyes filled with desire, only to halt before any contact. The more this happened, the more it scratched an itch in my heart. George became famous once again, And it was at this time he learned of Lucy's return. Turns out, he wasn't averse to intimacy with women. It was just that the woman wasn't Lucy. 2 days ago, I left the table after dinner, wanting to get some fresh air on the terrace. But I overheard a conversation between George and his friend. Lucy is coming back. What do you think? Heard she's broken up with your brother. George lowered his gaze, extinguishing his cigarette. It's good that she's back. Can't you let her go? His friend teased. Vivian is also good. You couldn't even paint when Lucy hurt you. It was her who helped you get through. She doesn't know your hand wasn't that badly injured back then, was it? I packed my things, took out George's house keys from my bag, and placed them in front of him. His usually soft Vivian is showing some backbone. His friend had a look of anticipation. George furrowed his brows. What are you doing? I threw the used tissue into the trash. George, I have OCD. I once told you that I won't even look at things that others have used. It's true. His face darkened abruptly, lips pursed, staring at me without a word. It's my fault. Lucy, with a look of apology, stood up to explain. We both got drunk last night. I only found out today that he has a girlfriend, or else. Don't say so much to her. George's expression returned to indifference. Now that you're back, it doesn't matter whether she's here or not. He looked into my eyes, each word enunciated. Actually, I never liked her. Unfortunately, those words no longer paid. I gave him a slight smile before leaving, noting George's sharpened gaze on me. As I exited the private room, I heard his friend ask, Did Vivian really walk away like that? She used to be like a sticky candy. Couldn't get rid of her. I merely understood that I couldn't compete with Lucy and chose to retreat. It wasn't until I stepped into the elevator that I exhaled heavily. I had poured all my emotions into these 3 years, yet I hadn't borne any good fruit. A barely audible wheeze reached my ears. As my thoughts returned, I noticed that the man in the elevator was Jeffrey. His face was flushed, and he seemed unwell, leaning against the elevator wall with a shaky breath as if he wasn't feeling well. I instinctively moved to help him but stopped, sensing something off about his condition. What's wrong? You don't seem ill. Jeffrey gave me a glance. Do me a favor. Help me to the underground parking lot. I hesitated for a moment, then seeing him wince in discomfort, I agreed. Okay. I leaned in, supporting his arm over my shoulder as we reached the basement level. When he leaned heavily on me, feeling feverish, even his breath was hot. Where is your car parked? He whispered a location, and the moist heat from his breath on my vulnerable neck made me uncomfortable, wanting to put him down quickly. At that moment, George and his group emerged from the elevator. Instinctively, I moved Jeffrey behind a structural pillar to hide. Jeffrey's body seemed unusually limp as he groaned lowly, almost collapsing onto me. Wait, George, look over there. Seems like Jeffrey is on top of a woman right here in the parking lot. Really? So thirsty, getting it on in a parking lot? Should we go check it out? I tensed, not so much about George's intentions but because of the incredibly embarrassing situation at hand. Seemingly unsatisfied with the chaos, Jeffrey leaned in closer to my ear, his hot breath causing discomfort. Guess how George would react if he saw this? I glared at him angrily, suppressing his hand as George's footsteps approached. A panicked worry overwhelmed me about the awkwardness of it all. Seemingly enjoying the chaos, still unsatisfied, Jeffrey's eyes filled with a watery gleam. You were upset in the elevator just now. Must have broken up with George, right? I whispered softly. What if I did? He suddenly laughed, his eyes bright. Never mind. George's cold voice sounded distant. Lucy and I have things to attend to. Let's go. After they left, Jeffrey finally let go of me. Stepping back to calm myself a bit annoyed, I said, You seem pretty healthy. You don't need any help. I was drugged. Drugged. A female boss, rejected by me several times, got angry and drugged me. He breathed softly, eyes smiling. Don't worry. Unlike George, even if drugged, I can still hold on to my principles. I gritted my teeth. You just leaned in so close, I couldn't resist for a moment. I glared at him, shocked at his words from earlier. You already knew about George and Lucy? So in the end, I was the last to know. A friend told me tonight that, Hey, I saw him and Lucy having a room at the hotel. He observed my expression. With your personality, you shouldn't just ignore it. I hung my head, and after a long pause, I finally spoke. 3 years. Even if it was just out of guilt in the beginning, over these 3 years, countless days and nights were spent together, experiencing so much loss and joy together, almost making me think we were in love. The feeling of being truly let down is not easy. Jeffrey rubbed my head and spoke gently. Okay, don't be sad anymore. If you start crying later, people might think I bullied you. Not comforting you is fine, but comforting you will actually make me a little sad. My nose was tingling badly, and with a hoarse voice I asked him, "Do you have any tissues?" Jeffrey was slightly stunned. His eyes dimmed for a moment. He handed me a tissue and murmured softly, "If the timing were right and the occasion were right." I raised my tear-filled eyes. Huh. Because of the heavy nasal tone and the grievance, my voice trembled slightly. Jeffrey's throat bobbed. He covered his eyes. I blame this damn medicine. I suddenly understood his meaning, taking a step back awkwardly. Do you want me to take you to the hospital? He seemed to smile. Silly, I just need to take a breather. Or you can say something random to distract me, I suggested. What did you have for dinner tonight? He was speechless. Ask something useful. Then I asked, what was the first thing you did when your eyesight returned 3 years ago? Jeffrey's expression suddenly became serious. I found you to see what you looked like. I was taken aback, never expecting that to be his answer. 3 years ago, Jeffrey was in a car accident and lost his sight. I was his caretaker then. Wasn't that disappointing? I chuckled, trying to ease the embarrassment. He shook his head. I didn't have high hopes for you to be very pretty to begin with, but seeing you exceeded my expectations. I couldn't tell if that was a compliment or an insult, so I touched my face, thinking it must be a compliment. Although you had a terrible temper at first and were very rude to me, I understand it. It's difficult for anyone to accept suddenly losing their sight, he said. I smiled and said, so I'm really happy now that you regained your eyesight. He gazed at me for a moment, a hint of tenderness in his eyes. Yes, the first time I saw you, that's how you smiled at me. I softly agreed. But soon after, you handed me a resignation letter saying you had to take care of your boyfriend injured in the accident. Jeffrey's tone turned indifferent. That guy, he could even be your boyfriend. Everyone has always thought I wasn't good enough for George. It was the first time someone said such a thing to me. Since you've broken up, you shouldn't have to be busy around him anymore, he said seriously. He added, are you interested in becoming a curator at my gallery? I trust your taste in art. I was a bit surprised. Vivian, I understand your thoughts very well, and I've never hidden mine. Jeffrey leaned on a structural column. Tilting his head to look at me, Jeffrey said, but this job isn't just for my own benefit. I believe in your capabilities. 6 months ago, my mother passed away from a serious illness. Apart from being heartbroken, it also meant I didn't have to worry about exorbitant medical expenses anymore. Besides, I needed a job urgently to repay the debts I had accumulated. After hesitating for a while and seeing the reminders on my phone about overdue payments, I finally contacted Jeffrey. Having been George's assistant and agent for 3 years, participating in numerous art exhibitions and auctions, I had developed my own sense of aesthetics and art appreciation, along with industry insights. I managed to adapt relatively well in a few days. As we were nearing the end of the workday, Jeffrey knocked on my desk. I guess I helped you out a bit. So would you like to invite me for dinner? Jeffrey had helped me more than once. A year ago, when my mother's condition was critical and required brain tumor removal surgery, due to the large size of the tumor and its deep location, the operation carried high risks. There were very few doctors nationwide who could perform such surgeries, making it extremely difficult to schedule. When I was in despair, it was Jeffrey who helped me contact the doctor and arranged everything from preoperative preparation to postoperative hospital recovery. Unknowingly, I owed him a lot of favors. I really should thank you, I smiled at him. What would you like to eat? You can choose the place. Jeffrey smiled. All right. He took me to a very romantic restaurant where live bands performed every night. Little did I expect to encounter George and Lucy there. It hadn't been long, and they couldn't resist coming to show their presence. George was right, she couldn't stand it for long. George was already her ceiling, making quite a profit from selling paintings over the years. Which woman would be willing to give that up? George leaned back in his chair, looking at me with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Listening to the unabashed comments of his friends around, I felt my body stiffen. Jeffrey returned from parking the car and put his arm around my shoulder, asking gently, "What's wrong? Can't find a seat." I felt relief. George had indeed provided me with significant financial assistance. I took care of his daily life, connected him with galleries for exhibitions, and received a portion from every painting he sold. First, I didn't want them. However, my parents left me with substantial debts, requiring me to work constantly to repay them, leaving me with little time to spend with George. After a while, he became increasingly dissatisfied. Instead of going out to earn peanuts when you have time, why not stay by my side as my assistant? I've told you before, I can't paint when you're not around. The money I give you should be much more generous than what you earn tutoring outside. Over the 3 years, my suffocating debt burden had eased significantly, and I was very grateful to him. Perhaps in George. Very softly he nodded, reminding me, "You're a bit tipsy. Let me find a female attendant to accompany you." I shook my head, placed the napkin back on the table and stood up, but my body couldn't help swaying a bit. "Are you okay?" Jeffrey got up and supported me. George stood behind us at some point, pushing away his hand that he had on my waist. "Don't touch her." He himself rejected my closeness, feeling disgusted even by touching my hand, yet not allowing other men to come close to me. I had always been careful to maintain a distance with the opposite sex, knowing this about him in the past. But now we had already broken up. There was a hint of anger in my heart, but considering the public place we were in, I didn't want to make a scene. I asked the waiter to change our table. Jeffrey calmly agreed. All right. Compared to George, Jeffrey was much more normal. George looked at me in disbelief. Vivian. Perhaps he never expected me to embarrass him like this. Ignoring him, I walked towards the restroom. When I returned to the restaurant, we had been moved to a corner by the wall. "I am sorry. Not only did I not bring a gift, but I also ruined your mood," I apologized slightly to Jeffrey. He smiled and nodded towards behind me. "I don't think you ruined my mood." I followed his gaze to see George staring at me with cold, stern eyes. Jeffrey leaned over and planted a gentle kiss on my lips, as the music in the background got louder. George cursed and quickly walked over, pulling Jeffrey away as he punched him in the face. "How dare you kiss her?" Jeffrey didn't hold back, retaliating by hitting him back fiercely. The restaurant manager quickly stepped in to stop the fight. I hurried to shield Jeffrey, whose lips were now showing signs of blood and his cheeks swelling. Seeing me defend Jeffrey, George got even angrier and wanted to strike again. I stopped him. "If you dare touch him again, I will call the police." George gritted his teeth. "You care about him?" I couldn't bear it any longer in that moment. Regardless of the occasion, I finally snapped. "We have broken up a long time ago. You need to control yourself." He glared at me, panting with anger. Lucy came over, holding him back. She had a look of clear surprise on her face, keeping her emotions in check as she softly advised George, "Let's go home." I helped Jeffrey leave. "What good is this blind guy?" George's words were harsh and unpleasant, but I responded calmly. "Thank you." His face darkened completely. I bought some medicine from a nearby pharmacy and treated his wounds a bit in the car. "Does it hurt?" I applied an ice pack on his swollen face. He nodded. I whispered, "You deserve it." "Was that your first kiss?" I stared at him, pursing my lips without saying a word. He chuckled, looking quite pleased. "That was a punch worth it." I tossed the ice pack to him and pretended to get out of the car. "It looks like you're not in too much pain. It's already late tonight, so I should go back home." He quickly grabbed my hand, the smile causing pain on his lips as he spoke in a hoarse voice. Don't be mad, I was wrong." He held my hand, showing a sense of vulnerability. "There are still 2 more hours until midnight, and I haven't had cake yet." His actions reminded me of 3 years ago after we got familiar with each other. He used to be distant and cold at first, but would get upset with me when feeling wronged and would apologize when he made mistakes. It made me feel closer to him in a way. "Shall I buy you a cake then?" He smiled. "Yes." After buying the cake, he suggested, "Do you want to go back to the place where you took care of me before?" His proposal caught me off guard as I thought he would dislike going there. After all, that place held many painful memories for him. Surprisingly, the house was cleaned and arranged just like before. Jeffrey put down the cake and led me to a room. As he opened the door, my heart trembled. The room was filled with numerous Winnie the Pooh stuffed toys, neatly arranged on the bed and the table covered with a lace tablecloth. I kept all these. After a car accident, Jeffrey had temporary blindness due to a brain hemorrhage pressing on the optic nerve. The doctor said it would take about 3 to 5 months for the brain to absorb the hemorrhage. If vision did not return after that, it would be troublesome. Initially, Jeffrey couldn't adapt to the darkness and became particularly irritable. He would sweep everything around him to the ground, refusing to eat and refusing to sit in a wheelchair. He would rather stumble around on his own, bruised and battered, than let me help him. He had driven away 3 or 4 nurses in a row, and I was the only one who stayed. Because he couldn't shower alone, I had to wait in the bathroom with my back turned, always alert to make sure he didn't fall. Once while dressing, he accidentally dropped his towel. Bending down to grope for it, he hit his head on the sink, crying out in pain. I quickly turned around to check but saw things I shouldn't have seen, and my blood boiled instantly. Giving up on dressing himself, he let me help him. I had never been so intimately close with a young man before, feeling awkward. I blushed as I helped him put on his pants. "Why are you shaking?" he mocked. "Haven't you seen a man before?" I had already gotten used to his sarcasm during that time, and seeing that he had a good figure, I didn't get too angry, also for the sake of money. Over time, I noticed a Winnie the Pooh toy by Jeffrey's bedside. He treasured this toy dearly, not allowing anyone else but him to touch it. Given his temperament, it was surprising to see him have such a childlike attachment. One day I casually asked about it. Thinking he would dismiss me as usual, to my surprise, he fell silent for a moment before sharing his past. "When I was 8, my mom gave me this toy. She told me she recorded her voice inside it and said that if I missed her, I could press the button and she would come back soon. But until the toy broke and could no longer make sound, she never came back. Later, I found out that she had heart problems and left for surgery, but the operation failed. Do you know why she only left you behind?" I was puzzled. "Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because your voice is very similar to hers in my memory." To lift Jeffrey's spirits and help him cope better, I made a soap opera-like move. Every day, I would give him a Winnie the Pooh toy recording encouraging words inside it. "When you collect 100 toys, your sight will return." Receiving the toy, he resumed his mocking mode. "Do you think you're in a soap opera? If it works, you owe me the money." Holding the toy, he lowered his head in thought. A brief moment later, he chuckled. Unfortunately, 3 months have passed, and Jeffrey still hasn't regained his sight. After going back to the hospital for a checkup, they said his optic nerve had slightly atrophied and needed more time to recover. Although his initial reaction was much calmer than before, he calmly asked me to take him back. It wasn't until a year later, when I was caught in a heavy rainstorm while shopping, that I rushed back, worried about Jeffrey being alone at home. After waiting for a taxi for a long time without success, I finally hailed a cab and realized there was already someone inside. George. He was a young, famous painter with a face akin to popular idols, many fans following him online. The driver cheerfully said, "This handsome guy couldn't bear to see you in the rain, so he came to pick you up." I was extremely surprised and thanked him profusely. George had barely looked at me once and didn't say a word. Later, the car rear-ended and collided with a truck, leaving us both injured. George's hand was pierced by broken glass as he shielded my face. It was this accident that bound together our otherwise unconnected fates. Later on, I learned that George had sent the driver to pick me up that day because my attire and resemblance to Lucy were quite striking. After the accident, I took time off work to care for Jeffrey, afraid he would worry about my injuries. After some time, I received a call from him. Jeffrey's voice was filled with joy. "Vivian, I can see again." I was genuinely happy for him. "That's wonderful." He asked where I was and expressed his desire to see me. I hesitated for a moment before apologizing. "Since you've regained your sight, my work is no longer necessary. It's perfect timing. I want to resign." He clearly hadn't expected my answer, remaining silent for a few seconds before asking, "Why?" Do you know George? He is a painter, and we were in a car accident recently. He injured his right hand to protect me, and I need to take care of him. If you don't have time, you could have just told me over the phone. He took a shallow breath. I like you. I was stunned, taking a moment before responding. But I have already agreed to be his girlfriend. And that's how we missed each other. After you left, these Winnie the Pooh toys accompanied me through many dull nights. He casually picked up a toy, pressed the button, and the toy waved its arms, emitting my slightly awkward voice. Jeffrey, you are an amazing person. Keep going. My toes couldn't help but curl in embarrassment every time I heard it. I could imagine your embarrassed expression while recording the toy. He smiled, and my mood couldn't help but lighten up. Isn't it because of my warm encouragement? He didn't deny it. I looked at him and said, Vivian, you exude warmth. He bent down and embraced me, sighing lightly. That's why we are attracted to people like us. In the darkest and most painful times, thinking of you gave me the courage to open my eyes after a night's sleep. I regret not expressing my feelings to you in time. Vivian, I have waited for you for 3 years. Can you give me a chance? Perhaps it was the lingering effects of alcohol in my body, or maybe it was the words he said that stirred a flutter in my heart. The soft light above Jeffrey's head softened his features, making his eyes look especially affectionate. I tiptoed and planted a kiss on his lips. He froze. I asked gently, a bit aggrieved, It's not that unpleasant for you to kiss me, right? George rejected me for 3 years but slept with Lucy on the first day of her return. Not showing it doesn't mean I'm not upset. Jeffrey held me tightly, responding to my words with his body. His kiss seemed even more eager and inexperienced than mine. After getting Jeffrey's approval for the theme of the art exhibition, I started preparing. First, I confirmed the venue, arranged the lighting and decor, and after learning about a renowned Japanese painter coming to the country, I made great efforts to contact their team. The painter had never authorized his work in the country before. To secure his participation, I flew to his city, showing my understanding of his paintings, admiration for him as a person, and the alignment of his work with my theme. He promised to consider it seriously and get back to us later. I was unsure if this was a polite refusal, or if he was genuinely considering it. I couldn't put all my hopes on just this one master. While I traveled to negotiate with other artists, George sent me a painting. It was a portrait of Lucy I had never seen before, beautiful, pure, and crystal clear. Her eyes seemed to hold the rain from a midsummer night, cool yet tainted with the dampness and restlessness of summer, oblivious to it all. The painting was titled Night Dew. So this was how George saw Lucy. It was evident he sent this painting to provoke me. After all, in the past 3 years, he had never painted anything for me. With George's reputation, his contribution to the exhibition would undoubtedly enhance its value, and I had no reason to refuse. But George got angry when he found out I didn't reject his gesture. He called to question, his voice laced with unexplained anger. Are you that short of money? You know I've always been short of money. I found it amusing, glancing at the painting to my side. I should thank you on behalf of the gallery for the painting you sent. Truly a genius artist portraying Lucy so attractively. I believe it will sell for a price that satisfies you. The air became heavier as he dealt with the phone, pressing some buttons and casually tossing it aside. Fine, this one doesn't count. I hugged him, blushing and muttering. It's okay, Jeffrey, it's my first time too. The phone on the other side crackled, followed by a man's breath filled with anger. If you dare touch her, I'll kill you. It was George. Jeffrey hung up and continued. It wasn't until the next noon that I woke up from extreme fatigue. Turning on my phone, I realized George had called me hundreds of times, faintly remembering what happened last night. He had heard everything too, but it didn't matter. Struggling to get out of bed, I found Jeffrey cooking in the kitchen. The sunlight on his face made his features particularly handsome. Walking barefoot over, I leaned against him, unable to resist asking about last night. You shouldn't be at this age. He understood what I meant, turning his head away awkwardly. Aren't you the one who doesn't like touch things? My heart raced as I hugged his waist. You're such a silly fool. You really waited for me for 3 years. After breakfast and a quick tidy-up, getting ready to go to my place to get some things, I unexpectedly saw George at my doorstep. He must have been waiting all night. His eyes were bruised, weary, and exhausted. His hand appeared injured, fingers stained red with dried blood on the ground, looking menacing. George glanced at Jeffrey and then fixed his gaze on me. Seeing the kiss marks on my neck, his eyes darkened and his injured hand trembled slightly. "Did you do it last night?" he asked. "Yes." Jeffrey embraced my shoulders, his voice low, sounding somewhat unsatisfied. "Vivian is really so soft." George's eyes flashed with rage. Jeffrey kissed me affectionately and remarked, "I must thank you. Following you for 3 years and living as a widower, Vivian's first kiss was still mine." George's forehead veins swelled, his eyes completely red. "Touch her once more and see what happens." Before I could react, Jeffrey was knocked down by him. "This is not just about kissing her. I have done many more outrageous things than that." Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, but he seemed unaware, still smiling provocatively. She was so unfamiliar that she dared not even open her eyes. Touching any inch of skin would make her tremble. "But all of this has nothing to do with you." George was completely enraged, and the two of them wrestled together. My attempts to stop them were in vain, so I had to call the police. It was only when the police arrived that they barely stopped. "How dare you compare yourself to me?" Jeffrey, with bruised eye sockets and short of breath, looked proud. "Vivian has a cleanliness obsession. I have never been with another woman, but what about you?" Jeffrey scanned him disdainfully. "You are too dirty." George's face turned pale. With me as a witness, it was proven that George was the first to strike and Jeffrey was only acting in self-defense. The former ended up being detained for 7 days due to fighting. Jeffrey was not lightly injured, but he seemed rather pleased. George's judgment wasn't too bad. At least he could see that we were a good match. These were the words George said to us when we left the restaurant after they exchanged punches last time. He actually remembered it all this time. I felt a little helpless. Fortunately, there was still some time before the art exhibition opening, or else showing up with such a face in front of the media might have sparked rumors among netizens again. A few days later, George called me. "Are you out?" I asked. He was silent for a moment, then said, "There is an issue with the painting I gave you. It needs modification." "You mean Night Dew?" I took a shallow breath. "That was your work from 5 years ago. Why modify it now?" "Yes," he said. "I will come to your gallery instead." George arrived. The bruises on his face had faded slightly, and bandages still wrapped around his hand, making him look considerably thinner. I led him to the office where an easel and paints were prepared. "You can focus on your creation here. No one will disturb you." With that, I prepared to leave, but he stopped me. George held my hand. I was taken aback. He rarely touched me directly. After all, the old him avoided women other than Lucy. I tried to pull my hand away, but he held on tight. "What's wrong?" George took a step forward, pinning me against the door. The corners of his eyes were slightly red, as if restraining emotions. He lowered his head, getting closer to me. "Isn't this what you want?" Our soft lips touched. His eyelashes trembled slightly, unable to resist deepening the kiss. "Vivian." I dodged in surprise, unable to avoid it as he pushed past my lips hastily, pushing him away. George's breath filled my senses. Our tongues entwined smoothly, the saliva tasting sweet. His eyes darkened, his other hand gripping my waist. Tears welled up in my eyes. The once anticipated intimacy now felt repulsive. I clenched my teeth and bit down hard, causing George to retreat in pain, glaring at me. "Get lost." I was so angry. "You're insane." He probably had blood in his mouth, gritting his teeth. He could, but I couldn't. Yes, I was so dizzy with anger. "You can, but I can't. You deceived me with a painting modification only to do this." George's chest heaved. Then he spoke slowly. "What if I told you Lucy and I never did anything?" I stared into his eyes. "Regardless of that, in my eyes you're already dirty." The art exhibition opened as scheduled. Featuring a renowned Japanese artist, it attracted a large number of art industry professionals and media. Much smoother than I had expected. At the banquet, George also arrived. He was constantly greeted and exchanged pleasantries with those around him, his expression aloof, not responding to anyone. Others eventually left him alone, but George came up to me. The look in his eyes was complex. with emotions I couldn't quite discern. Congratulations. I remained silent, then raised my glass with a smile. Congratulations to you too. Night Dew fetched quite a high price. In the end, he did modify that painting. That day before leaving, he dipped his hand into the red paint, stroking the painting and smudging Lucy's face. Yet this stroke added another layer of meaning. Beneath the image of a pure maiden, her eyes held jealous redness, her face splotched with desire. After the banquet, George asked for some time to talk to me. Before I could respond, Jeffrey took me to introduce me to a prominent figure in the business world. Smiling and gracious, I had a poor tolerance for alcohol, but today was no exception. So on the way home, I rolled down the car window, letting the city's scent flow in with the evening breeze, dispersing the alcohol lingering on me. Actually, I had been very anxious before today, afraid of not doing well, afraid of ruining the art exhibition and disappointing your expectations. I stuttered out. You did well, even exceeded my expectations, Jeffrey reassured me softly. Your performance today has turned you into a walking business card, and more people will discover your brilliance in the future. My nose tingled trying to hide it. I jokingly said, Does that mean I am going to get rich? He laughed. Yes. I rested my head on his shoulder. Thank you, Jeffrey. At my wedding with Jeffrey, I saw the painting George had called me to his house for that day. Turns out he had painted me. In the painting, I was wearing a green dress, bending down patiently instructing him to paint with his left hand. He looked calm, a faint smile on his lips, appearing extremely close and dependent on me. The floor was littered with crumpled paper and spilled paint, and the bandages on the artist's right hand had already been mostly removed, revealing an undamaged hand. The faint morning light shone through the window, casting sunlight on his determined left hand holding the paintbrush. The painting was titled Left Hand. I forever lost my left hand. That day, George announced his retirement from the art world. Lucy's epilogue. She called him, asking if he would pick her up from the airport. He hesitated. Vivian was waiting for him at home to celebrate her birthday. In the past 2 years he had forgotten, but this time for some reason he remembered. Lucy sensed his hesitation and spoke more softly. George, it's been so long. I miss you. He remained silent, then said, Okay. It wasn't that he couldn't see through her facades. It was just that no matter what she said, he was still willing to believe. He went to meet her. In the restaurant she was drunk, her eyes red, tears streaming down. She said, George, I divorced him. She said, what I was pursuing was just a misconception. He drove her to the hotel. As the door opened, she hugged him, her voice almost sobbing. Now that I'm back, is it too late? He lowered his head to look at her. In his mind flashed back to the scorching summer 10 years ago, filled with cicadas' cries and suffocating heat. A young him pushing open the bedroom door only to see the bodies of a man and a woman entwined, bare, abhorrent and despicable. The air reeked of sour decay, along with his mother's flushed cheeks, Ike's and the man's contorted face. She was having an affair with his uncle. He remembered vomiting. He fell ill for a long time with a high fever that wouldn't subside, plagued by nightmares. At that time, Lucy told him that her dad was cheating too. Her mom was very sad, crying every day. She was so angry with her dad and felt so sorry for her mom. If it were me, I would never do something to hurt my family. Me too, he said. Because of that vow, they decided to be together, to be the person who would never betray each other. Lucy became his muse, his only muse. She was a sanctuary in his heart. But later on, she fell in love with his brother. They kissed in private, tongues entwined as if the nightmare of their youth was replaying. She was panic-stricken but never explained. After that, he found himself unable to paint. No matter how hard he tried. All he saw in his mind were the images of his mother's affair alternating with scenes of Lucy entwined with his brother. He tore up the canvases and threw them in the trash, trembling all over. So dirty. And then he met Vivian. A car accident injured his right hand. The girl felt deeply guilty and asked him if there was any way she could make it up to him. Upon hearing about his injury, Lucy left an apology letter and promptly followed his brother abroad. The news of their marriage soon followed. He sneered, I lacked nothing except for a woman. Then Vivian became his girlfriend. But she was always just a substitute, a substitute for when Lucy wasn't around. Coming back to reality, he looked at Lucy before him. She was still so beautiful. 3 years had passed yet she hadn't changed a bit. He loved Lucy. It was an obsession rooted deep within him. He knew he couldn't let her go. He closed his eyes slowly, holding her. "I've been waiting for you." Lucy, driven by alcohol, kissed him. They both fell onto the bed. There was no overwhelming longing or passion one would expect from a long-awaited reunion. Faced with her closeness, he felt somewhat uneasy, a feeling he had never had before. He held Lucy, kissing her forehead. "Give me some more time." In a bar, a few friends discussed his past with Lucy. That was supposed to be a reception prepared for Lucy's return to the country. Vivian was the only one who was unaware. Watching the marks on his neck, Vivian understood everything. He didn't expect her to break up with him so decisively. She said, "I don't want something that has been used by others. Not anymore." When he heard that, his heart clenched suddenly. A mix of pain and panic washed over him. Vivian was clearly just a substitute for Lucy when she wasn't around. Since she was just a tool, he didn't need to care about her thoughts and feelings. He ignored the strange feeling in his heart. When Lucy returned, everything should have gone back to how it was before. But he still couldn't paint with his right hand. Lucy leaned on his shoulder, a smile playing on her lips, softly reminiscing about the beautiful memories they had shared. It should have been a warm scene, but in his, he saw the look the girl gave him, felt the warmth of her breath as she crouched beside him, and remembered her soft touch and elusive fragrance. She gently held his left hand, encouraging him to pick up the brush, and he couldn't refuse. Her lips were soft and glossy. His breathing became heavier. The thought of kissing her felt so desirable. At first, these thoughts were fleeting, quickly dismissed because of his aversion to sex due to witnessing his mother's infidelity. Even normal physical contact with women made him uncomfortable. But somehow, he couldn't stop these strange thoughts about Vivian from growing stronger. A week later, he ran into Vivian at a restaurant. What made him uneasy was seeing Jeffrey by her side. Jeffrey didn't hide his attraction to her. It felt unbearable to see him immediately pouncing on her after their separation. Jeffrey kept filling her glass with alcohol despite knowing she couldn't handle it. Vivian, the clueless woman, didn't seem to notice. He felt irritated for some reason, wanting to cut off Jeffrey's hand placed around her waist so he would never touch her again. Soon, something even more infuriating happened. Jeffrey kissed her. He hadn't even kissed Vivian yet, so how dare Jeffrey? A surge of jealousy overwhelmed him, causing him to lose control in a moment of blindness. By the time he regained his senses, Vivian was standing in front of Jeffrey, protecting him. He heard his voice filled with jealousy. "What's so great about him? But I guess you two match well," Vivian said. "Thank you." Upon hearing those words, his heart felt a sudden pang. Even though Lucy was back with him, he couldn't paint anything anymore. Every time he returned to the studio, sitting in front of the easel, a flurry of emotions overwhelmed him. Anxious, confused, and every time he looked up or down, that woman's image was everywhere. Even with his eyes closed, she still appeared in his mind. In a messy studio, Lucy cried beside him. Suddenly, he realized that he cared more about that woman than he thought. Things started spiraling out of control. On his birthday, he waited all day in the studio for her, wanting to give her the portrait he painted for her. That was his painting of her. From morning to night, she didn't show up. He called her and heard soft moans intermingled at the other end. He had never heard her so captivating before. "Jeffrey, this is my first time too." While he was hung up on the phone, he knew the conversation continued. He was bombarded with sensual images in his mind, vividly imagining all of Vivian's features being explored by another man in territories he never ventured. A bittersweet taste rose in his throat as he stared at the glass shards deeply embedded in his palm. This time he knew Vivian wouldn't care anymore. He sought out Vivian. It was ridiculous. Now, even with Lucy's portrait, he needed it to have a chance to see her. He wanted to tell her that he had overcome his demons, that he wouldn't treat her the same as before, that his feelings for Lucy were just adolescent infatuation and obsession. But now he realized she wasn't who he imagined. He wanted to say, "Vivian, I love you." Yet Vivian's expression was so disdainful. She said, George, you're tainted in my eyes. Eventually, he saw clearly that Vivian and Jeffrey were happy together, much happier than with him. Jeffrey, unlike him, had the ability to love, to help Vivian become a better version of herself. Jeffrey was indeed much better than him. And he could no longer find someone to let him paint with his left hand. He had lost his left hand long ago.